And we are recording this. So if you have people in your organization that weren't able to join live and you'd like to share the recording, or folks who weren't able to make it, we'll be sending out an email that contains the link to access the full webinar. Hello, good morning to those who have just joined. Maybe give it another minute or so here, and then we will get started. There we go, there's another bunch. Okay, it's 1 minute after 11. I know your time is really valuable, and I'm grateful for those of you that are here with me and with us right now to talk about creating a culture of connection. So, a couple housekeeping things before we dive in. Of course, this is a webinar, so largely I'm going to be trying to share content and perspective, but we will open it up at the end for questions. And if you have anything, you can put that in the chat as we go along. And my hope here today is that you're going to walk away with some new ideas as well as some new actions you can take as a result of spending this 45 minutes or so talking about creating connection. So welcome. My name is Heather Haas. I'm president of Advisa, and we do a lot of work in the realm of creating effective teams, leaders, and cultures because we believe people deserve to love where they work. So many of you on the webinar have worked with us to use the predictive index. Some of you on the webinar, you've worked with us on leadership development programs or sales training or creating core values and helping get your new culture launched. So all of the things that we do, they're all in the spirit of helping our clients improve the way that they're connecting with the people in their organization so that they can achieve their goals and keep people engaged and help them thrive over time. So that's where we're coming from, and it's always wonderful to see clients who I haven't seen at least your names or heard from you in a while. So thank you very much for being here. I want to start with some trends that are kind of hot off the press-ish, I guess. Because some of these you're going to see are a bit of a shift from some of the buzzwords and things that we've been hearing about for several years. For example, this first trend that's really shaping the way people connect or don't at work and the way that we're experiencing work is this shift from quiet quitting, which we were hearing about and reading about forever coming out of the pandemic, to quiet hiring. So there's really an opportunity right now for organizations to get out there and quietly try to scoop up or make contact with some of the top talent that they need to fill out their teams and grow their organization. So all that is to say, I think organizations are starting to realize there's a lot of really great talent out there, and they've got to start taking a more active role in finding the right people to join their teams. Of course, flexibility has been a huge buzzword that's impacting how all of us experience work. But what we're finally seeing is that in many industries and organizations, that flexibility is reaching the front lines. So for a while there, it was kind of like the C-suite, maybe management was able to come and go, but frontline workers had to be there. I think we're starting to see more organizations are getting creative and finding ways to have that flexibility touch more of their staff. We're also seeing that number 3 is a really big one. We hear a lot about it at Advisa as we're working and training and supporting our clients. This idea that managers and leaders are struggling and they're sandwiched between, top leadership expectations and the groundswell of new and different employee expectations. And tragically, we haven't done a lot to reskill or support these managers in navigating being the meat of that sandwich. So that's definitely something we're seeing. Also, you're seeing people start to go after non-traditional candidates to expand their talent pipelines, getting a lot more creative with sourcing, because of course we all need people. That's our challenge. Number 5 there, this idea of pandemic trauma, that where we're all healing from that or moving beyond it, there's a path to more sustainable performance. And actually, this one is kind of the opening for why this idea of connection at work has become so popular. If I reflect over the last 18 months, I do a lot of speaking at conferences and things. And by far, this talk track around connection has been the number one topic that I've been asked to speak about. And I think it's precisely because we learned a lot about ourselves and about what we need to be healthy and to feel fulfilled in our lives over the last few years. And what we learned is we want to work somewhere where we feel taken care of and where we have genuine connection to our humanity and to the other people in our midst. So that's what that number 5 is. And I think that one is really kind of what's giving rise to the interest in this topic. We're also seeing that organizations are pushing forward with DEI amid growing pushbacks. So a few years ago, there was a huge and exciting upswell in organizations who were exploring how to become more inclusive, who were investing in diversity programs, et cetera. And as all change and all things that are new, as does happen, that kicked up some dust. And I think some leaders started to realize like, okay, this is harder and messier than maybe we thought. So let's pump the brakes. But now many companies are saying, now we're a little wiser about this and we're able to have some more honest conversations and we're going to push forward. So not sure how that one resonates for you and your organization, but definitely something we're seeing. Number 7, getting personal with employee support creates new data risks. So all of the information, personally identifiable information that companies are tracking and keeping track of, all of the AI, all of the chat GPT, I mean, all of the things out there conspire to crack some holes in the data fortress that we've tried to build. So that needing to be GDPR compliant and needing to be really safe and secure with people's personal data continues to be a very important trend going into the future. And then you have something rather related, this idea of algorithmic bias and those concerns leading to more transparency in recruiting technology. So this is as AI starts to infiltrate the recruitment space and starts to step in the place of human beings who are making evaluations and decisions and judgments about candidates fit to role. As AI starts to do more of that, companies and I think the tech industry are going to have to really explore this idea of algorithmic bias. Are we sure that the way the algorithm is preferencing or prioritizing candidates, are we sure that that's not causing adverse impact? And then the last trend, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with, because we hear about it a lot, that Gen Z, there's a real skills gap. And that's revealing that there's workforce-wide erosion of social skills. So again, we not only see those of us that have teenagers or young kids or are close to kids in any way, there's no question that there's a difference in the way some kids are interacting with other human beings, given that they've had a high-powered computer in their hand since they could walk and talk. So all of these things, I wanted to start here because this is the big picture that we're all operating in. And this idea of connection and bringing more humanity into the workplace is within sort of this bigger aperture that we've zoomed out to take a look at. More specifically, these are the things our clients, some of you, maybe some of them who have said these things to us. Help. These shifting demographics are really challenging. My people are struggling. They're struggling mentally, physically, financially, spiritually. All of the digitization, the AI, the remote work, we've got existential threats happening in the world. We've got social and political unrest. And all of this tends to funnel through leaders who are trying to care for their people, grow their people, and get work done with and through their people. So this is a great moment we're not going to open it up because we have a lot of people on the call, but I'd love to just pause for a couple of seconds here for you to reflect on those big trends that I just shared and think about, how are you experiencing some of those? Or how are those things impacting your customers? And even you personally, as you think about how mentally, physically, spiritually healthy and well do you feel at this moment? Or your people that you work closely with, what is your sense about how they are doing and what they need? And if you have any, ahas or anything that really comes to mind, feel free to drop that in the chat. Especially if one of those trends really jumped out for you, we'll be able to see that come through. Okay, so as you continue to kind of have that mulling over, that really brings us to, so what do we do about this, right? Without healthy, capable people, we cannot execute our grand strategies nor achieve the business results that our key stakeholders expect us to achieve. So the people piece, those human beings that lie in the space between strategy and results, that's where I want to focus. So the business case for connection, this is a model that we use in a lot of our leadership development programming. And, we really start by acknowledging that almost every organization knows what results they want to achieve. They've got KPIs, they've got OKRs, they've got goals, they've got metrics. Most organizations have that nailed, because that leads to what kind of customers do we need to hit those metrics, and what do we need to be doing and providing for those customers. So most organizations are pretty clear on the right side of this model. And then there are even some organizations who are also measuring employee engagement. Many of you on this call are doing best places to work, or you're using Gallup, or you're using the predictive index engagement survey. So some organizations are also collecting some data and trying to understand that piece of their business. But tragically, precious few organizations actually start kind of over here on the left with investing in leaders' ability to drive this value chain. Because leaders are the ones who create the conditions for people to connect, build relationships, and leaders are the ones that are really helping to shape the culture of your organization. And that culture is either magnetic, pulling in the best and brightest people and keeping people attached, or it's not. And people are either repelled by your culture because they don't feel connected, they don't have an emotional tie to who you are and what you do, so they leave. And the reason this is so critical, that leaders are able to create the conditions for people to connect, is because without people who are engaged and showing up, giving their best efforts every day, they can't deliver for customers. And if we don't have customers, we don't get results. So what I like to say is that at Advisa, we help our clients work this chain left to right. What if leaders had the skills, the tools, and the space to build those relationships and show up for their people in very authentic ways and coach them and give feedback and may even make the hard decisions about who is a good fit and where do we need to make a change? Where leaders are effectively doing those things, then people are engaged, they feel connected to each other and to the work, and then that's what creates value, and that's also what creates competitive advantage. So let's unpack this. Why connection? Why that word? We could be, for many, many years, everybody was talking about engagement, but I'm choosing to talk about connection. We as humans are neurobiologically wired to connect. So it's very primal, this need that we have to connect to each other. And of course, from an evolutionary perspective, this was about survival. I think today, connection is really what gives us purpose and meaning in our lives. And then, of course, many of you are probably familiar with Brené Brown, who's done a ton of work on connection and shame and work culture. But she describes connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. And I love that, because those three descriptors, seen, heard, and value, are what point us to the very practical ways that we can try to create more connection in our organizations. So this is where I'm going to get really practical with this. We started big picture, thinking about the trends, thinking about what has shaped the work environment that we all find ourselves in. Then we looked at the leader's role really in driving and setting the tone for a culture of connection. And now I'm going to talk about what I call the 4 levels, or Connect 4 is kind of an easy way, like the game we played as kids with the red and yellow little chips that we put in the thing to try to get 4 in a row. But there really are 4 levels of connection, and where we are paying attention to helping connect people to their work or their jobs, connecting people and their managers, so those one-on-one manager to employee, leader to direct report relationships, helping to connect people to their team, and then connecting people to the broader organization. Where we're paying attention to all 4 levels, we have the best odds of retaining the best and brightest people so that we can serve customers and achieve those results. So let's dig in here and start to unpack these one at a time. So first, oops, I lost my share there. Hopefully that came back. There we go. The first connection is connecting people to the work. And this sounds obvious. Everybody's got a job within your organization, but you'd be surprised how often people don't really fit, their strengths don't really line up with the job, and or they're not really sure how what they do every day is important to the broader work of the organization. or they're not sure if they're even doing the right things day to day. So one of the most practical ways to reconnect people to the work is to just pull out the job description or take a moment to look at the key performance indicators and make sure that they reflect new organizational priorities. Make sure that the employee is clear and that they know where their role begins and ends relative to other people's roles. Make sure that employees understand what level of performance, what type of performance is expected. Often we just assume that people know what to do. And leaders often expect people to know what's in their heads. And there's really a lot of value to be gained by pausing in a one-on-one to just say, I'd love to just touch base on how you're doing in the role, talk about how what you do every day is important to our team metrics and the broader company. And that's what I call that line of sight conversation. Every employee deserves to be able to see from their job and their laptop, wherever they are and what they're doing. They should be able to kind of figuratively, if not literally, see how that is important and valuable beyond beyond their little corner of the company. Then another way that's really practical in terms of helping people connect to the work is to do what I call feed forward versus feedback. For many, many, many years, managers have gotten good at feedback. Let me look backward and tell you what you did right and tell you what you did wrong. And that's essential, don't get me wrong. We all need that kind of feedback. That's how we learn. But it can be really a kind of a fresh way to flip the script by doing what I call a feed forward. So focusing on the future and using language like going forward, a do different would be to give your colleagues a heads up before making a change in the system. And by framing it future focused, that's really a very developmental kind of message as opposed to a punitive or evaluative, because really what everybody's showing up to do, I truly believe most employees show up every day to do good work. Keep telling them, hey, going forward, an upgrade next time you do this project would be as follows. So an upgrade, a do different, those tends to be words that are really very neutral and really easier, especially for Generation Z, younger employees, to embrace that kind of language and feel motivated to then do their work differently and in a better way. So that's the first connection. So as you think about that second level of connection, one-on-one, the most important relationship in an organization is employees to their direct manager. We've read all the research on that. It's a really critical relationship. And if we think back to Brené Brown's definition of connection, people need to feel seen, heard, valued. I would even add to this that in order to solder this manager to employee connection, employees have to feel cared about and they have to feel safe. And I just threw a lot of words there. And if you go back to those work trends that I shared at the beginning and how managers feel sandwiched and are under a lot of pressure, that's a lot. And we haven't really equipped our managers and leaders with the skills and the tools to reconnect and create safety. And how do you teach someone who's extremely results oriented that it's okay to pause every now and then and care about people? So there's a lot of opportunity for development for leaders here, but very practically, you can just spend time getting reacquainted. The one-on-one meeting that your leaders and managers are having with people on a monthly or every 2 weeks or whatever the cadence is the lifeblood of that relationship. So in those meetings, leaders can really seek to understand first and ask questions. How are things going? What's been difficult lately? What are you proud of lately? And then the key is really listening and not rushing to solve or, put in your own thoughts and ideas. Protect time for employees to be able to really share. And where leaders are doing this consistently, employees start to trust that the leader really cares. And that's how that relationship, that human connection gets built. Also, you'll see number 3 there is huge. People have feelings. We can pretend that we don't have them, but we're humans, so we all have feelings and emotions. And I think for a long time, leaders felt like their job was to keep emotion out of the workplace. There's no place for that. When in reality, we know from EQ, emotional intelligence, our emotions are really powerful information in ourselves and when we're picking up on it from others. And that emotional information can help us break down barriers, reach new levels of understanding, move through change more effectively. So the acknowledgement before you jump into progress or problems or tackling whatever the day holds, you can say things back to people like, that sounds really frustrating. I can see why that was difficult for you. It makes sense that you would be really upset right now. This is a hard change. And the thing I always, when I'm coaching leaders, I always remind people that showing that kind of empathy doesn't mean you agree. Empathy is not agreement. And once you can embrace that, you might not agree that an employee feels frustrated. You might think that that's silly or that their perspective is unfounded, and maybe it is. But they're still having the feeling, and you're not going to get past the feeling to solve the problem until you acknowledge it. So that's a really practical, easy upgrade that I see a lot of leaders starting to take. You also want to share a little bit about your own world if you want to build connection, a little bit of personal vulnerability. What's been hard for you? What gives you hope as you think about the future? People hear that from you and they're drawn to it because it makes you human. And it helps employees see like, okay, I'm not the only one that's having a hard time with all these changes. You can say, yeah, these changes are really hard and they're important and there's good reason why we're doing them. So we'll step through it together. Finally, the how might we question is a game changer because it puts you with the employee. So where you're facing a challenge or an employee has shared a frustration, you listen, you acknowledge the feeling, you can share a little bit about how you're feeling. The way that you flip into problem solving mode and sort of like get back to business is a how might we question. So employees been kind of airing their perspective and feelings, you've listened, and then you can say, okay, so how might we make this situation better? And the subtle use of the pronoun we, instead of saying, so how are you going to do that, is again a way that you convey connection, a way that you convey that I'm with you in this. We're in it together and I'm here to help. And that's what fosters trust and shared purpose. So that's the second connection. The third connection is team. So all of us are on a team of some sort, I shouldn't say all, nearly all of us. Very few people are truly just individual contributors and their work is not connected to the efforts of others. But the best way to foster team connection is clarify goals and roles. So if you're already having team meetings, keep your goals in front of people and make sure each team member understands what do I do that's different from my teammate? And Where does my role begin and someone else's end? That kind of clarity then enables people to collaborate without feeling like they're stepping on someone's toes, without feeling like, oh, this is my job. I thought it was my job. It's the leader's job to really clarify all that and create opportunity to discuss it and keep it in front of all of us. I would also say that team connection can really get to a whole new level when you're willing to explore the diversity on your team. So those of you that are predictive index clients, you have all kinds of tools to understand different behavioral dynamics. Who are we as individuals? And even what is our kind of team type? So those of you that are using the team tools in the software, I mean, that is a game changer for bringing a group of people together and creating some synergy around who are we relative to what we need to accomplish. There's also all other kinds of diversity on your team. Don't be afraid to create opportunities for people to share about who they are and about their perspectives, because that diversity is what makes you stronger and it's what makes you more creative as you come to the work. There's also an opportunity to ask your team, engage your team in some ideation around how could we improve? Here's what the team is tasked with achieving. What do you all think about the best way to get there? Sometimes managers think they have to have all the answers, and the reality is your team has the best ideas. So routinely bring the group together, ask those questions, get people problem solving and ideating. It's really energizing and it fosters that sense of we. And then lastly, prioritize the beginning of your meetings for sharing and connecting before you get into the progress and the problems. Often in our leadership development work, if you've been through our programs, you know this, we always start with what's called connection before content. And what we know about how adults learn and about human beings in general is that we're wired to connect. Now, some of us are more social than others, of course, but the team is a beautiful opportunity to throw some opening questions out there at the beginning of a meeting, some icebreakers, and especially virtually, you know, where you're looking at your team through a little box on your laptop for your meetings. You have got to work even harder to open up some dialogue for some sharing. A couple icebreakers that I've used that can be fun. One of them would be, if you had a warning label, what would it be? That one usually gets tons of laughs. A heavier one that could be more appropriate for a team retreat kind of meeting would be talk about something that you've had to persevere through in your life. And then people can choose, you know, what level, what they want to share and disclose. But that's an opportunity to get a little deeper than the work. Another great one that I love is, what's your favorite concert? What was it? Why was it your favorite? Or even share something that you've learned, something new that you've learned recently. It doesn't have to be work related. So as you do that, for those of you who are thinking, oh my gosh, I've never done that, my team's going to think I'm crazy, give it a try. And where you stick with it, you'll find that people actually start to really look forward to that 5 minutes where they're together as a team connecting. Okay, fourth connection. Your mission, vision, values, those are the lifeblood of who you are and what you're about as an organization. And we know that especially Gen Z, even more than money, more than other elements of benefits and things in the work environment, people want to do meaningful work and they want their personal values to connect with the values of their organization. You can't solder that kind of connection if you aren't regularly talking about, here's who we are, here's where we're headed and why. And this is the really important mission. And, so just to share an example, at Advisa, I shared it at the top of the webinar. Our mission is to create effective teams, leaders, and cultures because we believe everyone deserves the opportunity to thrive at work. That's what we're about. We don't think work has to be terrible. We think work can be amazing, and a healthy, nurturing place for people to spend the majority of their time. So that mission and that point of view that I've put out there by sharing it, that's going to be a way that people can lean in and grab onto that and say, yes, I want to be part of that. Same thing with the vision. People want to know where the organization is going. They want to know that they're attached to something that's going to be successful or prosperous or doing good in the world. And then, of course, your core values, that is your corporate character. Your values are the pillars of your intentional culture. The more you talk about those, the more you unpack the behaviors that roll up into those values that hang on the wall, the more people realize the importance of living those out. And your values are a powerful thing because once you name them, you have a responsibility to live up to them and hold people accountable to those values. You can recognize people who display those behaviors, and you can use your values in a really powerful way in recruiting. Because people, like I said, people are going to be drawn to those things like a magnet or repelled. And it helps you really get the people who are going to help you grow in the ways that you want to grow. If you're not already, you need to periodically understand the employee experience. So number 2, survey your clients, survey your employees to understand how they are perceiving and experiencing your organization. Lots of ways to do that. We can help do that. We do engagement surveys all the time with our clients. But if you're going to survey, the most important thing is people need to know that you're going to do something with their valuable input and feedback. You don't have to make all the changes, obviously, that people might suggest, but use that insight, use their good feedback and to hold up a mirror and help you get better. That's a way when employees see over time, wow, they listened and now it's better. And they keep listening and they want to know what I think. That connects the employee to your company. Finally, we've all got policies and structures, that rules, guidelines, handbooks. We all have those things. Periodically review, do our organizational policies, do our stated norms align with the intentional culture that we aim to achieve? An example, years ago, we had a different parental leave policy, and it wasn't as generous, it wasn't as flexible, and I think years ago, it was still called maternity leave. And I had an employee who came to me and said, I don't think that this maternity leave policy is reflective of our core value of family. And I think that there's a disconnect there. And that conversation was really eye-opening for me, and it led to making a huge change to where now we offer 12 weeks of paid parental leave. And that kind of change is a direct example of I had to do some soul searching and really acknowledge, you know what, she's right. We can't say that we're a family first organization and then not really equip all parents to take the time, enough time that they need to bond with their child without fear and pressure of the job that they're stepping away from. So that's just an example of that. But this fourth way is again, I mean, this is your employer brand, but then it's also the real lived experience for employees when they join you. So let's recap before we open it up for questions. This is a brave new world, as we talked about at the top of the hour, with all of these trends, all of these things impacting the world of work. The constant, though, is that leaders are your culture carriers. They have a tremendous responsibility and opportunity to create that effective work environment, or the conditions, if you will, for people to connect to themselves, to their work, to their team, and to the mission, vision, values of the company. Leaders are the ones who are soldering these connections day in and day out through their mindsets and behaviors. And that's what drives employee engagement, which is what drives customer loyalty, which is what helps you achieve those financial business metrics that are so important. So I'm going to check the chat here. Yes, Nicole asked the question, can we get a recording of this or the slide deck? Oh, thank you. She said this is great info. Yes, Nicole, everybody on this webinar, as well as the people who signed up who weren't able to attend, we'll be sending you the recording. So you'll hear my voiceover, and it'll also have the slides that I've clicked through in that. Great question. Okay, so driving this strategic relationship chain, the reason we call this model a chain is because these things affect each other. And obviously what we're most passionate about at Advisa is the left side of this. How can we equip leaders who are really struggling out there right now to drive this chain and bring value, carry the culture that their organization needs? And, you know, to just kind of put a finer point on that, you may have heard that the Surgeon General even recently came out and declared an epidemic of loneliness. They use the word epidemic. And when you think of it in those terms, building a culture of connection isn't just like a nice fluffy thing to do. It's everything. It's what we all must do, because the people in our organizations, they're important, and they deserve to be in community with one another and to be cared about and to be developed. So I've got a closing quote here, and then we'll open it up. I hope I've sparked some questions and ideas, but this is a long quote, so I'm going to give you a second to read it. It's by Margaret Wheatley, and she's written and researched and done some great work. She says, conversation is the way that humans have always thought together. In conversation, we discover shared meaning, and it is the primal human organizing tool. Even in the corridors of power, very little real action happens in debate, but rather in the side rooms, the hallways, the lunches, the times away from the ritual spaces of authority, and in the relaxed spaces of being human. In all of our design of meetings, engagement, planning, or whatever, if you aren't building conversation into the process, you will not benefit from the collective power and wisdom of humans thinking together. These are not soft processes. This is how wars get started and how wars end. It's how money is made, lives started, freedom realized. It is the core human organizing competency. Conversation is what leads to connection. We have to talk to each other, talk with each other. So I hope that taking a few minutes this morning to step out of your daily work, to think about those 4 levels of connection: work, the manager connection, the team connection, and the organization, has been helpful. And I hope that you may feel brave enough to come off mute and ask a question. And I'm going to hang out here. Of course, the team at Advisa, we are here to help you with all of this. Certainly send me an email or chat if you'd like to specifically follow up and kind of have a meeting coming out of this. But for questions real time on this webinar, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I have a question to kick us off. Heather, first off, thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation. I really loved seeing it kind of broken down into those 4 different areas of connection. I think one of my things is I'm very strong at the one-on-one connection, and this is something that I know. And I kind of see it lack in some of the other leaders that I'm coaching or that I'm working with. So do you have any suggestions as to how to help facilitate their one-on-one connection with other folks, or to give tips or feedback as to how they might be a little bit more comfortable in that space where we might see it lacking or kind of breaking down some of that cultural connection?
Great question. I have 3 tips or ideas, I guess, to your question, Catherine. The first is it's important that leaders know that connecting is an expectation of their job. So sometimes we just assume that everybody's going to go out into the world the way we do and like build relationships, and it's so easy and it's just who I am. In my experience, a lot of leaders have not envisioned that it is important to have those one-on-one relationships. So step number 1, take a moment and make sure people know connecting is important. And here's why it's important, and explain the why. And in your role, the more you can build relationships with others, the more effective your team will be, etc. The second tip that I have to help people improve the way they interact one-on-one with others is use self-awareness. Give them the behavioral assessment from Predictive Index, for example, or the EQ 2.0 assessment, some kind of tool that helps the leader understand their own strengths and hardwiring. That is a catalyst then for them to have a little more confidence in understanding, like, okay, this is who I am. This is sort of why I do what I do, and other people are wired up differently. And that's okay. And so the more a leader understands their own strengths and even kind of watch outs and things they have to self-manage, the easier then it is to engage effectively in other one-on-one relationships. So self-awareness, number 2. Number 3, you've got to give them some training and some practice. So you mentioned coaching. You're probably already coaching people in this way, but the round back in a one-on-one to say, hey, we talked last week that you were gonna, try out asking some different kinds of questions in your one-on-ones with your team. How did that go? What did you learn about the people that you have on the team? What do you have in common with the people on your team? So that kind of accountability for that leader who's struggling with this sends a consistent message of like, I know this isn't natural for you, but you need to keep doing it. And eventually you'll be able to shift that accountability to question to something like, what successes are you seeing? Now that you're starting to be more intentional about building relationships, how is that paying off? And that's the really powerful one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. What else? Anybody else brave enough to ask a question here?
Hi, I put something in the chat.
Oh,
But I think just to summarize it, like I think I work in HR, so I do a lot of coaching, kind of like the last question, of managers who are trying to build those deeper connections. And I think, are there any tips or tricks to like help support those people as they're trying this for the first time, like having open questions, having powerful questions? Because I find my managers get a little nervous when it turns into something they can't provide, like, so if it comes down to, well, I don't make enough money, or, that's a very basic example, but as you're like digging through those things, I think there's a strong instinct to like fix or solve. So I want to give people the tools to like help them, just validate and hear and acknowledge without feeling like they have to fix it.
absolutely. Well, the first thing is letting them know that the best leaders are learners. That we don't have all the answers. So giving them permission right off the bat, like, hey, You're going to be more relatable and more effective by branding yourself as a lifelong learner, branding yourself that you don't have all the answers, but what you do have is the ability to care about their perspective and be clear with people about what you can affect and what you can't. So I get it. It is scary to kind of open it up and ask, because you never know what you're going to hear back. But really helping your leader and even doing some role play, like, what are the things that you're afraid, or what are the things you've heard from employees that have left you feeling less than confident? And whether it's they want more money or they think the new change is a bad idea, just reminding them that if it's you want more money, you don't have to have the answer for it, explore it. So the employee says that, tell me more about that. When you say more money, where's that coming from? What are your financial goals? Let them share, let them talk. And then that manager should be equipped to say, well, the reality for your role is this is kind of the salary band. But I hear you. You want to grow your earning potential. So I'm happy to work with you over time to talk about how you can get more skills so that you're adding more value in your role, or to help you see different career paths within the organization that might get you there. So that's just an example of employees share something a little kind of scary, the money thing, or I want a promotion. The manager doesn't feel like they have to meet that need. What they need to do is explore it so the employee feels heard and cared about, and then cast a broader purview into like the options or the possibilities. And then work with the employee to try to move in those directions where it makes sense. Good question. What else? Any other burning questions here? Okay. Well, I am grateful to have spent 45 minutes here with all of you, 45 plus, I should say. Thank you for being with us. All of you are connected in some way to a member of the A-team, and we care a lot about you and about making sure that your leaders in particular, have the skills, the tools, and the support that they need to create more connection in your workplace. So if you haven't checked out our website, where we have a training and events page, there's all kinds of open sessions, our emerging leaders program, leadership fundamentals, as well as our leadership academy. You can just go in there and sign up. And of course, we also do a lot of very, very customized work. If you'd like to sit down and talk about how we might create a learning experience for your organization, please let us know. That's our passion, and our greatest joy is to bring that learning to you. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.